Lent is upon us. Did it sneak up on you the same way it snuck up on me? I was in my office today at the parish and I smelled smoke. And I got very concerned. And then all of a sudden I realized it was just the palm being burned, making the ashes for Wednesday. So I felt a little better after that. When I was teaching at the seminary, I was also the dean at the time. And one of the things in my mind, I was trying to get a sense of how can we as a community make sure that we're not just simply observing the moments of the liturgy over the course of these 40 days, but allowing the spirit of the season of Lent really to kind of permeate into our lives as a community. So one of the things I thought would be good is that because Friday is a penitential day every day of the year, but in particular in Lent, I thought, you know what, let me see if I can somehow entice the seminarians to stay in on Friday nights. They're permitted to go out after Vespers. And I thought, let me see if there's a way we can do that. And so I sat a group of them down and I said, look, I have this idea. What I'd like to do is let's order some pizza, no meat of course, and we'll watch a movie together. And I said, but I'd like it to be a classic movie. And they looked at me and they said, you mean like Top Gun? And in that moment, I felt very old. Because I had the aviator glasses and the bomber jacket. I said to them, no, guys, that's not what I'm talking about. I said, like a classic movie. And they said, well, we're not going to watch something in black and white. I said, okay, all right, okay. We'll find something that's colored. Okay, good. And I said, I'd like it to be something that has at least some Christian undertones, or even better, some overtones. And I said, it'd be nice for us to, kind of sit and watch this and maybe be edified by it. And we sat there for a little while, and they were throwing a lot of things, and I kept saying, no, that's not what I said, I'm talking classic Hollywood, like Lenten fare. The Ten Commandments, the Scarlet and the Black, the Mission, right? Right? But then I finally got to my favorite, Ben-Hur. Oh, you better pack a lunch if you're going to sit and you're going to watch Ben-Hur. So I talked it up so much that when they were advertising it, they had a picture of Charlton Heston in the chariot with my head superimposed on it. And we sold it as it's got everything. It's got chariot racing, it's got sea battles, and it's got Jesus. What more could you ask for? Right? But it really is, how many of you have you ever seen, I'm not talking about the new one. Don't talk to me about the new one, the 2016? I'm sorry, no. I'm talking 1959, 11 Academy Awards, Ben-Hur, right? Yeah. How many of you have seen it? You seen it? Great. I don't have to worry about spoiler alerts. If you haven't watched it, I apologize in advance. There's spoilers, but it's not going to ruin it for you. Trust me. So what's Ben-Hur all about? Well, one of the things I think that's really important is the name of the movie is not the name of the book that it's based upon. The book was written by an individual named Lew Wallace, and it was entitled Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ. Now, as a young man, when I was introduced to the movie, I will freely admit, I didn't catch all of the storylines and all the themes and even some of the nuances of it. I was caught up in the spectacle of it. The sea battle, the soldiers running around everywhere, the chariot race, all of these things. And I got to be honest, I think, honestly, when I was a kid, my parents only let me watch the first half because it was so long they wanted me to go to bed. So I didn't catch most of the stuff. But as an adult, I have a completely different appreciation for the movie. At first glance, you may think it's a story of vengeance. And certainly that's a theme. But it's really a story about conversion. The main character is a gentleman named Judah Ben-Hur. He is from an aristocratic Jewish family. And he grew up with a young Roman friend named Messala. They're best friends. They spent all of their childhood together. And Messala has gone away to Rome, and now he has come back as the tribune. And Judah and his family are overjoyed by this. But what happens is, through twists and turns in the story, eventually what happens is Judah is betrayed by Messala. And as a result, all kinds of terrible things happen to Judah and his family. And Judah becomes a very angry, bitter, and vengeful man. And this drives the story. But all throughout the story, there's this mysterious figure that keeps popping in and out. And it's our Lord. He shows up from time to time, just little nuanced moments. But the way that he appears the most in the story is through another character. Judah, even though he's angry and bitter and vengeful, is in love with a woman named Esther. And if you watch the movie, Esther is always and everywhere the moral compass. She's always the one, she's like the North Star, constantly pointing Judah in the right direction. And there's this pivotal moment where Judah comes back to the house and he's so angry. He can't contain himself. And he's spewing all of this out, and Esther, who loves him, is listening to all of this. And finally she says to him, "I've seen what hate can do. It has completely burned up my father. It has consumed him. But I've met this young rabbi. He says that forgiveness is more powerful and that love is greater than hate." And Judah scoffs at this notion. He has no time for it. But he goes away, and you can tell that it's ruminating. It's up there. And Esther doesn't give up. Even after Judah finally achieves the vengeance that he thinks is going to free him from the anger that has been consuming him, it's still there. It's still festering. And in another moment with Esther, she gives it right to him. He's in some way professing his love. And she says to him, "I fell in love with Judah Ben-Hur. You are no longer that man." It is as if that which you set out to destroy, you have now become. You have become Messiah. You guys were all silent. That was good. Because it's that just powerful moment where it knocks him down and he realizes that it's true. And she talks to him about Jesus. And she's there for the Sermon on the Mount. And she says to him that this rabbi is talking about you need to love your enemy, to pray for those who persecute you. Blessed are those who show mercy. Blessed are those who make peace. And Judah, like many people who are angry, he's not ready. He's not ready to hear it. But you can see he's beginning to weaken. The pivotal moment occurs by some twists and turns. Judah finds himself at the foot of the cross as Jesus is dying. And he comes back and he recounts to Esther what his experience was. He says to her, while he hung upon the cross, he spoke his last words. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. He said, in the hearing of his voice, it was as if the sword fell from my hands. And he was completely changed. The story of Ben-Hur is a tale of the Christ, and it's a story of redemption. You know, my brothers and sisters, I was talking with a priest friend of mine on the phone a couple weeks ago, and he said to me, he goes, Pat, he said, what's your experience right now? I said, what do you mean? He said, there's a lot of anger around. Do you get that sense? I said, yeah, John, there's a lot of anger. I said, you know, there's civility is kind of covering it. But I said, you don't have to go very far. You don't have to scratch the surface of that very much before you get to what's bubbling and seething underneath. You know, my brothers and sisters, there was a time in my life, I was a very angry man. I know many people might be surprised to hear. If you knew me, you'd be really surprised to hear that. But I was really, really angry. And I remember there was a priest friend of mine that I was talking to on a regular basis, and you know how when you're angry, you become a broken record? You know, you just keep going around and around and around. It's the same things over and over and over again. And you don't maybe realize it in the moment, but everyone else around you is tired of it because you keep going back to the same thing over and over again that set you off. And I remember one day he said to me, he said, Pat, not listening to you anymore. Done. Here's what I want you to do. You go over to the church, you kneel in front of our Lord and in front of the image of the crucified one. You tell him everything that you've been spewing out to me. Let out all that anger in front of him. See how that goes. And I did. I went over, I knelt down, and for all those years I've been a broken record, spinning. And guess what happened? Couldn't say a word. Couldn't do it. It was impossible. How do you kneel in front of that? And feel like you're the one who got the bad deal? And in that moment of silence, guess what happened? I wasn't angry anymore. I let it go. Because I learned the lesson that Esther was trying to explain to Judah. Anger, if you let it fester, will consume you. It will burn you up. And if you let it sit there long enough and you don't do anything about it, you become a broken record. And you keep spinning around and around and around in your hate. And then what ends up happening is the very thing that you sought to destroy, the very thing that you hated, guess what? You wake up, you stand in front of the Lord, and you realize, I've become the very thing that I was so angry about. And you learn, you have to let it go. You have to let it go. Jesus showed us the way. Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. In that moment, Judah let go of his anger. He let go of the proverbial sword. It can be, and it should be, for you and for me. Now, I don't know, brothers and sisters, one of the nice things about coming in as a guest homilist, I don't know you. But I wonder if maybe, just maybe, there are some of you that, if you're honest with yourself and a good look in the mirror, a good examination of conscience, if maybe, just maybe, you might be a little angry too. It might be over something that someone's done to you. And maybe you're justifiably hurt and angry about that. It could just simply be about the condition of the world that we find ourselves in right now. But I think the reality of the situation is, my priest friend's right. I think for many of us, just under the surface, there's just a lot of anger bubbling there. And I think a lot of times it's very misplaced anger. And it oftentimes trickles out at the people you least want it to trickle out at. I was listening to something the other day. Someone was telling a story about Fred Rogers. Do you know who Fred Rogers? Mr. Rogers, right? Mr. Rogers was telling a story about being angry one day. I almost fell over. Can you imagine what Mr. Rogers must look like when he's angry? What does he not? Change his shoes? I don't know. Like, what happens? But anyway, he was telling a story, and he said he was at work one day. Now, he was a minister, right? Fred, when he wasn't doing Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, was a minister. So he said he was angry one day, and he said, I left work, and he said, I was angry, and I went to visit my grandchildren. And he said they were out back, two boys, and they were playing with the garden hoses. They were spraying each other with the garden hoses. And he said, I had a bad head on my shoulders. So I said to them, hey, again, can you imagine Fred Rogers saying this? But what does that even sound like? I don't know. But he says, hey, don't spray me. Don't spray me. Well, as you all start laughing, so what's going to happen, right? So he tells the story that as he's standing there, the water from the hose keeps coming a little bit closer, and then a little bit closer, and a little bit closer, and they never actually sprayed him. But it got close enough where he said, that's it. It's over. Put the hoses away. You're done. Inside the house. And then he said, yeah, awe is right. He got in his car and he left. And he said, I was driving home. This was obviously before cell phones. But he said, I was driving home. And he said, I was thinking about it the whole time. I was thinking about it. And he said, by the time I got home, I realized those children didn't do anything to me. I had no right to be angry at them. I was angry at something else that they had nothing to do with. And he said to himself, I actually intruded on their fun. They were having a good time. They weren't hurting anything. But because I was in a bad mood, I didn't want anybody to be in a good mood. Can you imagine Fred Rogers saying that, by the way, in parentheses? Fred Rogers. So what did he do? He went into the house, and of course this is the era of landlines. He picks up the phone and he calls. And calls his grandson. And he says to him, he says to his grandson, look, I'm calling because I need to apologize to you. Because I had no right to speak to you the way that I did and to interrupt the fun that you were having with your brother. I was in a bad mood, and I took that out on you. And I'm sorry. Now, if the story had stopped there, it would still be a good story, right? But it doesn't. So he says, you know what his grandson said to him? That's all right, Grandpa. Everybody has a bad day. I forgive you. And he said, if I had never picked up the phone and apologized, he said, I never would have had that beautiful moment, one that I treasure in my life, of my grandson saying to me, I forgive you. Why do we hold on to the anger, brothers and sisters? Why do we let it consume us? Why do we make it turn us into the very thing that most likely made us angry in the first place? Is it our pride? Is it our envy? Is it sometimes the hurt that happens to us in this world? All those things could be true. But at the end of the day, if we let it fester, all it does is hurt and consume us. Jesus looked at his disciples. The Jesus who suffered the cross, looked at his disciples and said, "Love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. If someone strikes you on your right cheek, turn your left and offer it as well. If someone takes something from you, they take your tunic, give them your cloak as well." Love those who hate you. Pray for those who persecute you. Be merciful. Be a peacemaker. That Jesus said that. The one that we say we follow. So maybe, my brothers and sisters, tonight it's time for us to take that first step. Maybe we take a few minutes tonight before the Lord, and whatever it is that you're holding on to, maybe tonight's the night to let it go, to lay it down, to allow yourself to be free of the burden of all of that anger and all of that hate. Jesus wants you to lay it down. And I beg you, if it's there, lay it down. Let go of it. No matter what it is, no matter how long it's been there, let it go. Your God's love is enough for you. That no matter what it is, you can let it go. I've seen what hate can do. It will burn you up. But there's a young rabbi who says that forgiveness is greater, and that love is more powerful than hate. I believe that.